I am one of many organizations that are forming the Progressive Alliance here in the South Bay. We have not formed the Progressive Alliance, let me be clear about that. We view that as a process. About 2.5 months ago, we decided to begin holding progressive election forums to try to create unity among different groups that had been working disparately, and we wanted to start working together. Some of those groups have been the Santa Clara County Democratic Club, the Green Party, Push for Progress, which is an extension of the Bernie campaign, Move to Amend, Human Agenda, Democratic Socialists of America. So it's been and then another number of nonprofits and unions. So with that base, we actually held 3 different progressive election forums. Several hundred people attended, and we were focusing not on candidates, because we did have a lot of nonprofits participating, but rather on issues. So we looked at 12 propositions and 6 local measures, and we engaged people in dialogue about how to vote. And then we put out a ballot a statement in terms of what our results were from those progressive election forums. So today we're still in process. We've held a couple of meetings in the last 2.5 weeks with about 30 people at each meeting, and a lot of you are here today. Thank you. And with those people, we've begun to start to look at organizationally what we might look like, because something happened that we didn't expect. On November 8th, we went from a kind of slow planning mode into rapid action. And so we immediately then created a protest planning group at our last meeting, and a rapid response network to be able to confront what we know is going to begin on January 20th. But we have so much work to do, and I think we understood at the meetings that we have had so far that we really need to better understand how, especially the Progressive Alliance of Richmond was formed, and what it can teach us, because we're really all novices in this room in terms of, I believe, in terms of creating something bigger than ourselves. At our last meeting, I think we ended the meeting by saying we need to both work for political power in the South Bay, which means running candidates, and perhaps putting our own measures on local ballots, but we also need to focus on issues. We need to be very issue-oriented. If I may paraphrase Push for Progress, what are the 3 things of Push for Progress, Nasim? Issue-oriented, action-focused, and non-partisan,
party agnostic.
So I think those three terms pretty much summarize also where the Progressive Alliance locally, when it does form, wants to be working on issues in support of meeting the needs of people and planet. We also, on the other hand, really feel the need to begin to assert political power. And that is a whole other level that only people like Gayle McLaughlin would know about, because most of the people in this room have not run for office or worked on political campaigns to get candidates elected. And so today we're extremely honored to have Gayle McLaughlin, former mayor of Richmond, current city councilwoman, who has been with the Richmond Progressive Alliance from the very beginning. And welcome, and thank you very much for being here.
Start out by saying my name is Gayle McLaughlin, and I'm the former mayor of Richmond, California, and I was the first corporate-free progressive candidate to run and win, to actually run in the city of Richmond, which has about 110,000 residents. And thank you. So I have about a half-an-hour presentation, so I'm going to use a lot of my notes here, but I want to share with you how we got started and some of the values and principles that we carried with us. So, I was elected to the city council in 2004. That was my first campaign. Then I was elected mayor in 2006 and was re-elected mayor 4 years later in 2010. Then having termed out as mayor, I was elected again to the city council in 2014. Now I say I'm corporate free because in each and every one of these 4 elections, I refused to accept any corporate money and relied instead on the small donations of individuals, many individuals. More importantly, I had an organization behind me, an organization that I helped to create, and that's the Richmond Progressive Alliance, otherwise known as RPA. This organization was key to all my electoral successes, and later to the successes of other corporate-free progressives elected to the city council. My independence from corporate money distinguished me from all the other candidates. And it was greatly appreciated by the voters who welcomed it as a breath of fresh air in a corporate polluted electoral environment. In the recent election in November 2016, when the entire country moved to the right, Richmond voters not only passed a rent control ballot measure, but also elected 2 additional members of the Richmond Progressive Alliance to the City Council. So come January 2017, when these 2 will be sworn in, we will have 5 out of 7 members of the Richmond City Council. So that's a corporate-free progressive supermajority. And it's in a city that has been dominated by Chevron for over 100 years, right? Or that had been, I should say, dominated by Chevron. So just a few years ago, all council members were either bought by Chevron or intimidated by the oil giant, but not anymore. Based on our experience, I want to share some basic concepts for building such a progressive alliance to gain seats of the local government. And if we did it in Richmond with Chevron, threatening and flooding the local elections with millions of dollars, I believe it can be done anywhere. So here's how you do it. Here's a 12-step program. So, first of all, to get going, you must be really fed up to the point of no return. You have to say. You must have said enough is enough. And you must have finally arrived at the conclusion that we must be the leaders that we've been waiting for. So you must have decided to be in it for the long run, likely a lifelong commitment. You must truly be fed up with experiencing political disappointment after political disappointment and recognize that there is no more time for postponement. You must be clear that all you have is your own capacity to make a difference. You must be also clear that that is all you need if you find others in your community ready to build a successful alternative political power option with you. So that's number 1, fed up. Number 2, you are likely aware of the betrayals of the corporate Democrats and their corporate-controlled parties. You have seen them over the decades, and some of you may have kept voting for them because it appears to be, the lesser of 2 evils, believing it would at least make a small difference. Well, we are now dealing with the disastrous electoral results of 2016. You may think that Bernie's call to transform the Democratic Party has possibilities, or you may think that that effort is futile, that the Democratic Party is and will remain a tool of corporate control. In any case, you are clear that in every city, in every region, in every state, there is a need for independent and corporate-free organized political forces. You are ready to build such a political force. And that is what will help you, your family, your friends, your neighbors, your fellow residents to live better, healthier, safer, and happier lives. You heard Bernie's call to run for local political office to develop new corporate-free leadership and organization. You are inclined to respond to the call. Now you could respond and run as a lone ranger, or you can run for office while creating an organization. The latter is the RPA model. So number 3, this is what the RPA model looks like. If you're going to run, run organizing. Organize by running. Rather than being a lone ranger that tries to gather support from a few unions and organizations to run for office, the RPA model views running for office as a way to educate and develop anti-corporate consciousness, a way to create a long-term progressive local organization that will remain in place long after the election is over. Such an organization accumulates political experience, wisdom, and know-how with each electoral cycle. It also constitutes the base of support for the progressives that get elected to office. The organization participates in local struggles and mobilizations both during electoral years and non-electoral years. It is a channel to and a grounding point for the elected officials and for the community. Number 4. So this is how we did it. Find 10 or so good people with thoughts and values like yours. This initial group of people, very serious-minded people, deciding to put together a local progressive alliance will work better initially as a small group, the key people. Of course, you're going to expand beyond that small group. But it's important to keep it at a face-to-face level of connection. Keep it small for a while and have lots of conversations and meetings to be sure that everyone agrees with some very basic key concepts. This initial small group should be composed exclusively of non-sectarian-oriented people. In our view, non-sectarians understand that there are many ways of thinking among working Americans, and that all Americans have the right to participate and contribute in creating a better life for themselves. Non-sectarians are people who comprehend that there are different levels of awareness about the roots of our problems, that there is no one single roadmap for changing the world, and that the actions and contradictions of our struggles will shape our answers and our understanding. The founding group should also be gender balanced and as diverse as possible, and from different progressive political parties or no party affiliation. The members of the founding group will define the nature, the dynamics, and the tone of the organization to be created. Now 5, the founding group must define the nature of what they want to create. Now in the RPA model, the central goal is to achieve local political power and to sit at the local tables where decisions affecting our lives are made. And to be free of corporate ties in order to fully represent the interests of the regular residents. We have noticed for years in our city, like most cities, that there are a number of good organizations advocating strongly for the benefit of the residents. All these organizations attempted to make life better for residents, more equitable, healthier, safer, happier, all of that. However, the decision makers of the city council allowed industrial polluters to pollute, it allowed corporations to have special tax perks, it allowed the police to abuse, it allowed developers to ruin the overall common good. And the mobilizations and protests of all these local organizations that were there and still are there are important. And they're important to put pressure on government officials and on bad actors and to develop consciousness and solidarity among the people. But they also need to be accompanied and supported by progressive voting within the government council. And the RPA model had that as its explicit goal. Put political decision-making power in the hands of the people through corporate-free representation, representatives on the body in our local government. To be clear, the RPA is not a social service organization. and does not provide direct services to people in need, recognizing, of course, that social service organizations are important. But the RPA instead supports as much as possible the political struggles of organized local groups, and it speaks out and mobilizes people's support of such struggles. Now, like I've already said, the RPA is essentially an organization with the goal of electing these corporate-free representatives, and to also help the representatives be successful in carrying out their campaign pledges. So our goal is to win elections, while rejecting all corporate money, and to continue to expand and grow the organization once victories are achieved. Elected officials in the RPA model hold a commitment to not only serve well in office, but to also expand the organization. They, or in this case, speaking for myself, we understand that the organization got us into office to serve the people, and the organization needs to be supported and expanded so that it goes on promoting people's power and not an opposing corporate power. 6, after the founding group has clearly defined the goals, the next step is to find one or more viable candidates for the organize, run process. How does a candidate learn to be a good candidate? By being a candidate. Learn as you go. In the RPA model, an electoral defeat is not necessarily an overall defeat if the process of the campaign has provided the organization with more experience, skills, and wisdom. For example, an electoral defeat is not an overall defeat if the community has gained more awareness that there are corporate-free candidates challenging the local corporate controls. And increasing name recognition of the individual candidates and of the organization is always a plus. The progressive candidates must have some basic requirements, but they're very basic. You must be thoughtful, collaborative, and motivated, remembering that values and integrity are much more important than professional knowledge and government expertise. The founding group should rally around the candidate or candidates and form themselves into the campaign team. If there is more than one seat and more than one progressive candidate that is willing to run, the RPA model promotes the concept of running as a slate of mutually supportive progressive candidates. Each candidate will have particular strengths and priorities and can pull together their own small group of people functioning as a campaign manager, a treasurer, and other roles. But all candidates should be supported by an overall coordinating committee. So it has to be tied together, because resources can then be used efficiently by doing joint mailers, presentations, and other activities reaching out to the voters. Ideally, the progressive candidate or candidates will represent the demographic and other diversity aspects of the city residents. So for 7.7 now, I'm going to mention the key roles and tools of a progressive political campaign. They are the candidate, the campaign manager, the treasurer, and one will learn from the city clerk all the legal and financial steps involved with being a treasurer. You need an outreach coordinator, a fundraising coordinator, a traditional media coordinator, a website and social media coordinator. You also will need an electronic copy of voters in your city or district. You can get that from your county voter registrar. And you need a place to meet. A home is fine to get started. A room in a restaurant, a library room, a room in a peace center. You need a bank account. You need a P.O. box. You need a contact with a print shop, a contact with a mailing house. You need a domain name and a website, and a list of all NGO and service organizations working in the community. A list of all churches and community organizations in the community. a list of all opinion makers who have made progressive statements in blogs, letters to the editor, city council, and board meetings. In recent years, you look back, you realize who's out there making those statements. You need a list of all the traditional media contacts who cover the city and area, and a list of social media sites that cover the area. Then you come to number 8. That is when you organize a public forum, or forums. And you do it with clarity of goals and basic organization responsibilities of the key people, and with electoral tools in hand. With all this already, in place, you launch publicly the Progressive Alliance and the Progressive candidates. You organize a public forum and invite all potential allies and supporters, and you set it up to present to the public the newly formed organization. This is the San Jose Progressive Alliance. You present it. And you also convey its values and goals. And of course, you introduce the candidates. You invite people to participate in the alliance and the campaign. And you also invite prominent spokespersons from local organizations to talk about issues of social, economic, and environmental justice. The meeting also should allow all participants who wish to speak to have the opportunity to make a brief, time-limited statement. Now, the RPA's first forum was called A Dialogue on Richmond. That made perfect sense to us. It lasted about 4 hours, and it was very successful. This was back in 2004. Radio and newspapers covered it. The names of the 2 candidates, myself and Andre Soto's the other candidate, were in the news. Attendees left their contact information and joined the alliance. We were building a base. We were then able to plug these new interested folks into different campaign activities organized by the different campaign coordinators. 6 months later, in the campaign year, the RPA and the General Employees Union, SEIU 1021, put together a day-long Richmond People's Convention, 2004. Several hundred participants gathered to brainstorm and select priorities for our city. And in the later part of that day-long convention, the candidates running for city council, because other candidates came as well, we were all asked to share our positions and on the priorities that the people put out there. Number 9, this is the 9th point here out of the 12. Hear the people's issues and become aware of the hottest issues with lots of support around them. What are the hottest issues in your city? The local alliance should support these issues that are present in the community. And they will vary in nature and in intensity. For example, it could be a local environmental disaster caused or worsened by an industry. It could be a crisis in the cost of housing and rents. It could be a police brutality issue. It could be the lack of good employment or a school crisis. These and many other issues may be what's pressing on the awareness of the local voters at this time. The Alliance must prepare progressive responses to these hot issues, the hottest issues in the community, and make them central to its educational and electoral campaign. The hottest issue has the potential to bring to you more support, but also be aware it will bring more attacks from the corporate sector on the opposite side. And the hottest issue in the city or community may not be what the Progressive Alliance members think is the most important, but it is the issue on people's minds and what residents are concerned about, and that deserves a progressive response. We the progressives have to do that. You can do a white paper or a statement, and that you could post on your website, but it has to be out there so people know you are engaged. And highlighting a progressive position on a local ballot measure. You've already done forums on ballot measures. And an especially hot issue for your community is a really important thing, not only to support the ballot measure itself, but it will develop support for the candidate and for the Progressive Alliance. So it's always good to get, make a progressive position on these ballot measures. Number 10, join coalitions. Now, during electoral and non-electoral years, the Alliance will want to participate in short-term and longer-term coalitions taking place in the city on these big issues. Occasionally, the Progressive Alliance will lead the formation of a coalition, but more often it's something that you join. Somebody else is leading it, but the Progressive Alliance will send a representative, either a candidate or a potential candidate. Is always a nice way to participate in a coalition. An issue or issues coalition, of course, is broader than the Alliance, than the Progressive Alliance. And it's a really mutually beneficial way to operate because the Alliance members learn more about the community issues and strengths, and the coalition members get to know a candidate or a person from the Alliance promoting a candidate who will be on their side once he or she is elected. There's also wedge issues, and that's very important. And if the Progressive Alliance could get in the lead of the wedge issues, that's very important because those are the issues that take center piece in the campaign. So, members of...
I'm sorry, I don't know what a wedge, what do you mean
A wedge issue, well, we'll wait for questions at the end, but very quickly, a wedge issue is something that, is a very controversial issue, and it's really dividing things. Like in Richmond, we had rent control, which we passed. The Progressive Alliance was very much the ones coordinating that effort, and, some of the community was very much against it, some were very much for it. So we got in front of it, we believed in it, we do believe in it, we won. So issues that really kind of get in there in between some confusion that's out there in the community. Let me go on. So the support of these coalition members is very important for electoral battles. So it's really important to go beyond your alliance. So number 11, the Progressive Alliance core founding group needs to meet often. That's really important. Like weekly is what we recommend because it's important to discuss vision and implementation, and it's extremely important to keep reaffirming internally the goals and the progressive criteria of the local alliance. Now, there will be voices that suggest it is not wise to reject all corporate financial support, that taking corporate money for an election does not make a candidate dependent, or that it will bring resources for the outreach messaging, or that everybody else does it. So be aware and be absolutely unwavering about this fundamental principle of progressive politics. The Alliance cannot serve both the people and the corporations. So taking no corporate money really differentiates us from other candidates. And the complete rejection of corporate money and the demonstrated total independence from corporations will do far more for the success of progressive candidates than any benefit that would come from taking a few corporate dollars. So always, hold that true. In addition, while reaffirming the rejection of corporate money, have clarity and reaffirm the value of accepting both the support and financial donations from supportive organized labor. Now, some people get confused about that. A single penny from corporations must be rejected because the only goal of the corporation is to make a profit at everybody's expense. And the current laws of the land allow corporations to buy elections with corporate cash. On the other hand, every penny offered by brothers and sisters in organized unions are drops of sweat and tears offered in solidarity and in hope that the progressive candidate will represent the interests and needs of the great majority of the people, the 99%, the working class, the ones that the democratic process should benefit. It is simple. Corporations are not people, unions are people. Also be aware of attempts to co-opt the energy, the determination, and the organizational skills by self-serving political hacks who will likely try to push the organization toward the failed establishment venues and activities, seeking to absorb new efforts into the long-standing, ineffective in-crowd. These political operatives will come around looking for ways to take over and redirect the fresh water to their well, you know? We need to be as careful with them as with the sectarians of the political spectrum. The Alliance must maintain political independence. Now, the RPA model of Progressive Alliance has its doors open to all residents of Goodwill, regardless of political affiliation or lack thereof. We welcome all those who want to change their city and community for the better. We do not tolerate anyone who comes in with insults or aggressions. Over the years, the Alliance may need to let go of and exclude those who could not work with others in a civil way. Now, number 12. Start campaigning early with everything you've got. For a November election, the RPA model recommends campaigning to start in early March. Work hard for 8 months. Be out in the community at every opportunity. Distribute a simple brochure that presents the candidate and candidates and each of their 3 principal goals. Start canvassing and knocking on doors very, very early. And even if local voters don't have the election on their minds yet. Corporate foes will likely come up with lies and half-truths to attack the progressive candidates during the campaign. And the best way to protect the candidate against a well-financed smear campaign is for the candidate or candidates to have met and talked with and listened to thousands and thousands of individual voters. Have the progressive candidates speak at every public opportunity and systematically during the public comment time of the local city council or school board meetings, and they're often televised, so that will give them public exposure. All the candidates' presentations must be civil and constructive. Positive messages help. People are really impressed with calm, thoughtful, and solutions-oriented presentations that have a touch of hope and can-do spirit to them. By November, you will have won your first victory. You have either won an elected seat in local government, or you have the experience and skills which will make it possible the next time. You have a local grassroots progressive alliance in place. You have established a name and a reputation. After the election, evaluate and strategize on how to move forward with an eye toward the next election. After some well-deserved rest, you will be ready to start the process again. And this is the time to further, in between elections, further build your local progressive alliance and to attract and incorporate more members and supporters. You are on your way to local political power. Don't forget to connect with people doing similar efforts nearby, like in Richmond, and throughout the state. So I'm going to summarize what I have to say. I'm just going to go, just have a sentence for each one. And I also have some handouts to give you which summarize it as well. So, 1, we know we must be the leaders that we are waiting for. 2, we know we need independent, corporate-free, organized political forces in every city. 3, we run organizing to educate and to create a long-term progressive organization. 4, we start small, with a few people, small group, with thoughts and values like yours, like mine, non-sectarian and diverse. 5, our goal is to win elections while rejecting all corporate money and to sit at the tables where those decisions are made. 6, We find thoughtful, collaborative, and motivated candidates. We bring people in and we, ask them, will you, run as a candidate? Are you interested? Will you? As long as they're strong in their values and integrity, we want them. 7, we fill the roles and learn the tools of a progressive political campaign. 8, we present our organization and candidates at a public forum, sending out invitations widely. 9, we study and prepare progressive responsive to the hottest issues, and we present them, being attentive to those wedge issues. Losing my place here. 10, we get involved in short-term and longer-term coalitions in the city around these hot local issues. 11, we reaffirm and hold firm on the rejection of corporate money and the acceptance of union support. 12, we start campaigning as early as possible. We win, we get ready to start again, we connect with others elsewhere. This is how the RPA model recommends that we grow progressive organizations. The present is a time of struggle. The future is ours. Thank you. I have this summary here, and I'll pass, maybe pass it on. And on the back is some articles too.
Thank you.